Welcome back, champions. I hope you're all fantastic. We're checking out the Strymon Volante today, which is their take on a few different iconic multi-head echo machines. There is a lot to get through on this pedal, so I will try to explain as I go. I paid for this. I bought it used on Reverb. The price was pretty attractive, and I had that classic conversation where I said to myself, just get it at that price. If you don't like it, you can always flip it for the same amount of money. And like basically every other Strymon product I've tried, and there's a few demo videos on the channel of things like the Dig, the Timeline, the Big Sky, I unboxed it and it's awesome. They just do really, really good stuff. So I don't think I have to convince you that Strymon are awesome. I just want to show off what this particular unit does, and hopefully by listening to me play through it and talk through it, you can figure out if it's worth getting for you. Before we do that, this is the sound I'm starting with. It's a really, really distorted sound because who said you have to start with cleans? So the main party is happening with these 8 buttons here on the Volante. You've got 4 different virtual playback heads. You can set the core time with a time control, or as I like to do it, with a tap tempo foot switch here. And depending on where you have this spacing knob set, I've currently got it set at even, it's going to give you different rhythmic subdivisions with each of these buttons right here. You can choose to add feedback to each of those playback heads as well. So the basic setup would be to set it to even, tap your tempo in, and then head 4 is going to be a basic quarter note echo. If I turn the feedback line on, this repeats knob comes in and we'll set the number of repeats. You've got low cut, wear, which is basically high cut, mechanics, which is basically modulation, and you've got record level, which is going to control the amount of saturation on your repeats, and you've got 3 different delay types, as well as a half, normal, and double speed switch over here. So let's just hear this basic quarter note echo, and we'll play around with these controls here as well as the type. Currently I have it set on drum, which is your echo rec style thing. Let's hear tape, that's your Echoplex style delay. And studio, which is like a more hi-fi version of the tape. Now they all kind of sound pretty similar at those settings. Let's go back to drum. What I'll do is I'll bring a little bit of low cut in. I'll bring the wear control to about noon. I'll put mechanics kind of there. I'm gonna bring the record level up and compensate by turning the echo level down. So this is actually gonna add some grit to my repeats on the drum mode. So cranking low cut up kind of creates some space for your core guitar tone. I don't mind low cut kind of about there and wear at about noon. This is kind of already sounding like my favorite type of lead delay. And for dirty stuff, I like mechanics a little bit lower than noon. Pretty awesome. Let's hear tape at the same setting. I think drum is definitely the kind of most lo-fi and gritty, so I'll just kind of live here for now. And of course, we are going to hear this with clean sounds. I think you can hear the saturation that the record level is bringing a lot clearer with a clean sound, but we're doing things backwards today. So if I wanted a dotted eighth note delay, I could use head 3, which will give me this. With this even spacing, head 2 is going to be an 1/8 note delay. Alrighty, and head 1 is going to be a 16th note. We'll play around with this spacing knob when we get a clean sound dialed up. But first, one deep feature is that you can pan each of the heads. So let's do this. I want my quarter note and I want my dotted 1/8 note subdivision. What I'm going to do is, without knocking my guitar over, I will hold down the feedback knob here. I'm going to twist the time control to the right, so that will pan it right, and this one to the left. So now I have a quarter note delay and a dotted 1/8 note delay. This is my favorite kind of lead delay setting. Let's hear this in glorious stereo. That's pretty awesome. Pretty awesome right there. Another thing you could do is now what's the best way to do this? I like setting the speed to half, and I'll show off another cool feature. So what's happening now is that all my subdivisions are doubled. So this would be an 1/8 note delay, this would be a quarter note delay, and this would be a dotted quarter note delay. And what I'm going to do is hold down this button. So that is going to halve the volume of this repeat. Using the feedback, I'm going to pan it down the center. We'll do that. And then this delay, I want to pan left. And this delay, I want to pan right. So hopefully this will give me a circular style delay right here, where it's going to go left, right, center. The center is going to be half the volume of each of the other repeats, but because it's down the center, it's kind of doubled up. Anyway, if I turn on feedback on head 3 alone, we get this. I'll crank up the repeats, and you can kind of, if you're listening stereo, it's going to swim around your head in a circular way. That sounds pretty darn awesome. That's on the drum setting. Let's try a tape. Ooh, I like the tape a lot, especially with the wear control up a little bit. So I like that this whole kind of section is basically your character section. We're not far off hearing it with a clean sound either. But the other thing that's cool on here is you've got a spring reverb. So I'm going to just dial in some reverb on top of all of this. That's pretty awesome. Pretty darn awesome. Like I said, this pedal's fantastic. Whether it's for you or not, we got to figure that out as we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to switch over to a clean sound. We'll play around with this record level so we can hear some of the grit, and we'll play around with having like 4 playback heads on, and also stuff where, say, you have a playback head on, but the feedback from a head that's not on. I'll show you what I'm talking about in 1 second. So picking up from where we left off, there's that kind of circular setting. Gorgeous drippy spring reverb on there as well. I'll just bring the spring out of the equation for now. But turn the echo level down and the record level all the way up, especially on the drum. You'll hear these really nice gritty repeats. Fantastic. So let's try something where, for example, we turn on head 4 and I'll turn the other heads off, but I'll have the feedback from head 3 on. So I'll just pan this one somewhere down the middle. I hope the red light came on, I couldn't see it, but without the feedback, it's... Maybe let's go to normal speed on it. And I'll maybe turn the mechanics up and a little less wear. If I turn on the repeats for the associated head, head 4, alrighty, what if I turn that feedback off and I try 3 for the feedback? So that's really interesting. The first repeat is spaced as a quarter note, but then it's dotted eighth notes from there. Similar thing if I turn on head 2. So that setting there is really, really nice. It essentially lets you create a rhythm tap delay. Let's try that on the studio setting and I will clean everything up so you can really hear that. I think that's a really cool combo of head and feedback. So you can start to see how you can really do some things that other delay units don't let you do with the Volante. Let's play around with the spacing now. So I'll just stick with, maybe let's go with the dotted eighth note head, and I think that's panned down the middle. I'll turn some feedback on, and let's just turn it to a triplet feel. So as you can see, it's pretty easy to get lost just playing with these, especially with clean sounds. I've got my AirStep Midi controller hooked up to Volante, which gives you a lot of extra functionality. You can have up to 300 presets on here, and there's really good Midi CC implementation. Basically, any of these controls, any of the secondary functions can be controlled by standalone Midi CCs. They are all listed in the user manual. One that I like is playing around going from half speed to double speed, so you can do stuff like this. And you can also set up expression pedal control on here as well, which I think you hold these two buttons down. And then if I go heel down on my expression, I can kind of set up what I want, maybe lower echo level, less spring, less repeats, and I don't know, let's turn all of this stuff down. And when I push it down, let's funkify it. So heaps of spring, some more repeats, a lot more wear, a lot more of the mechanics going on. So I think I just press one of these and that is saved. Now, heel down to toe down, I can morph between those two sounds. Then if I hold down tap, I can get into sound on sound mode, which will just let me layer stuff. It would be much handier if I had this assigned to a MIDI foot switch or I had the pedal on the floor, but I don't. So this is my best sound on sound. Let's try. So much fun. I can't stress that enough. That whole sound on sound mode, I didn't expect to like that much, but I spent a lot of time just doing stuff like that, and I've actually cut that quite short. I didn't expect to get that into it on the video. Presets, like I said, you can have 300 presets. I've got my air step set up to select between, I think, 3 different ones. So I've kind of got my main favorite sort of preset set up here on the favorite switch, which is just that kind of dual delay we were playing around with before. But let's hear some of the factory presets. I think this is preset number 3. I'll just switch to my clean sound really quickly. One thing that's kind of universal about Strymon stuff is the factory presets are always really, really good. Those examples, I think, are really lovely in that they show off how good these factory presets are, where they're still really musical, but for me, they push me outside of my comfort zone, and they're not necessarily something I would dial in from first principles with this unit. And that just kind of applies across the board with this. This is a really well thought out, really well executed product. It's kind of hard to find anything bad to say about it, but I've tried, and I think the whole mechanics and wear labeling, I get the aesthetic appeal of that, where, you know, they're really trying to model the mechanical behavior of hardware tape echo units. But I mean, it's modulation, it's a particular type of fixed modulation, and it's a particular type of filtering with the wear control. So you got low cut, but then you've got wear. I would much rather they just go, you know, it's low cut, it's high cut. And the modulation does get kind of crazy pretty quickly. But again, you know, it's called a magnetic echo machine. Old tape machines were wild and crazy. It would be nice if the secondary function for the mechanics knob, which kind of lets you control, I forget what it does, if it's the where in the whole sweep, it kind of kicks in that ramp feature with the way it's modulating. If that was labeled a little bit better. I think my big criticism of Strymon stuff in general is just that the secondary features are buried. You have to read the manual to figure it out. A good example of secondary features that aren't buried would be the new Eventide H9 series of pedals. That was one thing which I thought really, really worked, where the Strymon stuff doesn't do it. Like, you don't know what knobs to press, and there's no extra labels on things. Like, if you want to control the decay on the spring reverb, you kind of got to remember what to press, or you got to consult the manual. And that's not really hard because everyone has a smartphone and access to the internet and access to the manual, but it would be awesome if, you know, somewhere in here, in maybe a different, maybe not a different font, but say a different color font, and maybe smaller, it said, like, you know, decay or something like that. And then on one of these buttons that you have to press and hold down when you tweak that, it had a little icon or something like that that let you know, hey, this is the secondary function. So once you've used it a few times, you'll always remember, oh, that's how I get into the secondary functions, and then I twist that. But at the same time, you actually don't have to use the secondary functions to get the most out of this pedal. The MIDI implementation on it is unreal, really good, and this would easily hang with any high-end rack mount processor in that regard, in the way MIDI CCs are implemented, the way it can take external controllers and all that kind of good stuff. So if you don't mind tweaking and you don't mind reading a manual and you're into MIDI, this is going to keep you really satisfied. My other complaint is that this has a USB port. This should have a software editor for it. In my opinion, there's kind of no excuse for manufacturers who are building units like this not to have functional software editors for Mac and for PC. Again, I'll use the Eventide example. I'll use Fractal Audio as another example, where the editor for the FM3 and the AXFX3 are unbelievable. They're so well thought out. They make dialing in tones so easy. And if you're going to use a box like this as a preset machine on a big pedal board, or maybe mounted in a rack, you're going to spend that time at home and you're going to dial those presets in, and you're just going to basically use a MIDI controller to change either the programs or change some extra functions with CCs. So I feel like having some kind of software editor would be awesome, where you have every single parameter laid out so you can see the secondary functions, have some extra modulation types in there that, sure, they may not be authentic to the hardware that they're modeling, but you can take it beyond the hardware. You can go beyond real, you can make it unreal. And I think that's something in particular with the Fractal stuff that I really like. And I feel like if Fractal were going to ever make a pedal in this kind of format, that they would definitely do that. So that seems like something Strymon could add on. They could develop a software editor for this. They could release a firmware update that could give you some more control over the modulation, or, you know, maybe the filter slope, so you can really get in there and actually play Sound Designer. But aside from that, you know, this is amazing at what it is. It's not going to be for everybody. I think if you love experimental tones, if you love just sweet sounding, darker sounding delays with a whole bunch of grit and character, this sits right at the top of the heap. It's pretty expensive in Australia, pushing $800 new. So much like all the other Strymon pedals, you know, you're going to hear this and you're going to go, well, now I want to try the Big Sky, and now I want to try the Mobius or the Night Sky. So you get one and it's a little bit like an addiction. You're going to end up spending a whole bunch more money. And again, for me, the value proposition would be like, well, if you just want this, just get it. It's the best at what it does. But if you wanted this and a dedicated reverb and a dedicated modulation, maybe don't go buy all three big Strymon pedals. Look into the kind of FM3 or Helix kind of ecosystem, because those things sound fantastic as well. But at the same time, Strymon just absolutely nail their hardware UI as well. So that is me absolutely nitpicking with the Volante. I really hope you enjoyed the tones. What did you all think? Have you got one of these? Are you in love with it like I am? Were you considering one of these, and maybe did this video convince you that you wanted to get one? Or maybe it convinced you that it's not the right one for you, and you can go and check out my videos on the timeline, or my Eventide pedals, or all the other stuff I've got up on my channel. There's such a big range of just really good stuff, and I think this is firmly in the really good category. So let me know what you thought in the video description. If you want me to cover anything else in a future video, or show off like the MIDI functionality, maybe do some tutorials with this, I am totally open to doing that as well. If you sat through this whole ending where I didn't do any playing and just listened to me blabber on and complain, thanks again. Otherwise, stay safe, be excellent to one another, and I'll see you all next time. Thanks for watching.